Hi, I'm Jacob Mukherjee. I teach political communications. This video is part of a series called Keywords, where I talk through some useful concepts and give my take on them. Today we're looking at A for algorithm. An algorithm is a formula that's programmed into computer software and used to make calculations. And in many countries around the world, an increasing number of decisions are now made by or with the help of algorithms. That includes which products to market or sell to which consumers, whether to loan particular people money, who to stop and question at airports and other national borders, which workers a company should get rid of, the areas of a city where checks should be carried out for poor housing conditions, and even to predict who's most likely to commit crime. They're also used in education. So for example, in the UK in 2020, school students who were unable to sit exams because of the COVID-19 global pandemic were instead awarded final grades based on an algorithm that tried to predict how they would have done if they had sat the exams. This plan didn't go well. So for example, students who had hoped to get A grades were instead given C grades because the algorithm made predictions based on, among other factors, the kind of school that students attended. The UK government was eventually forced to withdraw the plan to use algorithms to predict grades after a public outcry. Now, this may be quite an extreme example, but it's a good one to show that algorithms don't merely predict outcomes, they also determine social reality. My focus in this clip is on one area where algorithms do this a lot, and that's on the internet. The modern-day internet could not exist in its current form without algorithms. They determine what results we see when we use a search engine. On our social media feeds, they decide what posts we see and in what order. Sites like Amazon give us product suggestions based on algorithms. And of course, the adverts that we get when we use search engine pages, websites, social media feeds, or mobile phone apps are also determined by algorithms. As we click and like and watch and listen and buy and read and send online, we generate new data to feed the algorithms. Now, these algorithms are closely guarded secrets worth billions to the tech giants. The tech industry and its supporters claim that algorithms and the data they help generate produce more efficient markets and help consumers by personalizing our online experience. But there are several reasons we should be concerned about the way algorithms govern the internet. The first is the way online algorithms entrench and deepen social divisions and inequalities, supporting that basic point I made earlier about how algorithms don't merely predict outcomes, but create them. In the early 1990s, a researcher named Gandy wrote a book called The Panoptic Sort, in which he showed how the use of what we now call big data by private companies selling financial services, entertainment, and other products made inequality and discrimination worse. Algorithms used by these companies made decisions about the value of different consumers and sold them different products as a result. So, for example, someone the algorithm guessed was a white man living in a wealthy neighborhood might be advertised luxury cars, whereas a black woman living in a low-income district might instead be marketed short-term, high-interest loans. And today, thanks to the internet, the process that Gandy described 30 years ago is much, much more prevalent. As another researcher, Sandra Wachter, notes, people can effectively be denied access to products like loans or insurance policies just because a computer program decides, based on patterns in their online activity, that they won't be a lucrative customer. Where might this algorithmic discrimination lead? Well, you may have heard how China is working on developing a social credit system, which brings together a huge range of data to create a trustworthiness score for each individual in the country. Now that score could determine whether or not you're able to rent an apartment or buy a plane ticket or even get a job. The other main reason we need to be concerned about algorithms online is to do with how they shape and structure politics. As recently as 10 years ago, people were predicting that the internet would open up politics, reinvigorate democracy and empower ordinary people. The internet, it was argued, allowed protest movements to organize huge demonstrations really swiftly, even bringing down governments in some cases. Well, isn't this true? Well, partly. Of course, there are ways that grassroots groups and campaigns can use social media to organise and mobilise in ways that simply weren't possible before the internet was created. But the internet isn't a magic solution. Successful movements also need to have effective political strategies, arguments, and narratives. And besides, the rich and powerful can use social media just as effectively, if not more effectively, than grassroots protesters. In a fascinating article called Filtering Dissent about campaigns by indigenous groups in Brazil, writers Ochigame and Holston show how social media algorithms often boost the message of wealthy and powerful groups with lots of resources. Groups like big agricultural businesses and the mainstream media, in the case they looked at. They found that protesters and social movements were sometimes able to game the algorithm to get their own anti-establishment message across, but generally, they argued, the way algorithms are designed often benefits wealthy establishment insider interests. Another problem is that social media can be a very effective tool for groups who want to incite hatred. Why? Well, the platform's algorithms promote content that gets lots of reactions and interactions, because that's the content that gets the big audiences and therefore draws the most advertising revenue. So think about it. What kind of political messages tend to get the strongest reactions? Richard Seymour, Zeynep, Tufekci, and others have written about how platforms like YouTube end up prompting viewers to watch more and more extreme videos, including, sometimes, ultra-nationalist far-right material. Now, this isn't deliberate on the part of the platforms, but rather part of how their business model works. So YouTube, for example, doesn't actively want audiences to watch racist material, but that kind of content is boosted by its algorithms, which are designed to promote videos likely to induce strong reactions like hatred, anger, and fear. In any case, what the platforms are guilty of is taking money from political campaigns that deliberately want to trigger these kinds of negative reactions in order to win elections. As media scholar Shiva Vaidyanathan explains, there's now a huge industry whereby politicians, including ultranationalists like Trump in the USA and Modi in India, pay social media platforms to help them micro-target small groups of voters with images and messages that exploit their fears and resentments. Aside from election campaigns, even our own everyday behaviour on social media is shaped by algorithms. We often think and feel like social media is a free space where we can speak and act however we want. Well, that's not quite how it works. The platforms are not neutral spaces. Rather, we're pushed by the algorithms to behave in particular ways. The algorithms train us to create content that gets reactions and engagement, and we're rewarded with likes and views and comments. That's why we're more likely to post things that amuse or cause outrage or shock or other strong responses than things which stimulate careful thought and consideration. Now, I'm not suggesting that social media are the source of all evil in the world. As Paolo Gerbaudo points out, every political arena, every medium, not just the internet, shapes and limits the possibilities for politics in different ways. Also, some forms of algorithmic data collection and analysis are useful, as Benjamin Bratton argues in relation to the COVID-19 global pandemic, which showed that we really do need big data systems to help us track things like infections, vaccinations, hospitalizations, and deaths. Fine. But if some algorithms, and maybe also some aspects of social media too, have their social and political uses, which they certainly do, does that mean we simply have to accept a situation where these algorithms and these platforms are owned and controlled by giant tech company monopolies with their advertising-funded business models? Why can't we have publicly owned and run, democratically accountable communications platforms with algorithms that are transparent and that we can trust? Shouldn't we have the ambition to, as author Ben Tarnoff puts it, deprivatize the internet and bring the online public sphere under public control? Well, what do you think? Maybe let me know in the comments. I hope you've enjoyed this video and found it useful. Do share it if you have. I will see you next time. Bye bye for now.